Imagine sitting in a courtroom where silence weighs heavier than marble, where every blink, every breath feels like judgment itself. And then, an envelope slides across the bench. A soft sound, barely audible, but enough to change everything. Judge Judy pauses mid-sentence. Her pen freezes over the paperwork. The courtroom air shifts. Even the cameras seem to hold their breath. Inside that envelope, everyone assumes is money, just another payoff from another spoiled heiress trying to turn justice into a luxury purchase. But this time, it's different. This time, what's inside isn't just cash. It's something else. Something with a name written on it that even Judge Judy didn't expect to see. The young woman across the bench, 24, perfect posture, tailored cream suit, wears a smirk like it's her birthright. Victoria Lancaster, daughter of real estate mogul Richard Lancaster, worth nearly $12 billion. Her father's name echoes through skylines and bank vaults. She thinks it echoes in this courtroom too. But this is Judge Judy's courtroom. The one place where last names and dollar signs have no value. Victoria taps her manicured nails against the table, unbothered, confident, waiting for Judy to play her part in the silent transaction. The audience doesn't know yet what's happening, but they can feel something wrong humming in the air. Judy looks down at the envelope, her eyes narrowing just slightly. Her fingers don't touch it. Instead, she glances toward the bailiff, just a flick of her gaze, and the man takes one slow step forward. The cameras zoom in, lenses focusing on the single object sitting between them like a loaded weapon. What the world didn't know then was that there was another set of eyes in that room, eyes hidden inside the wood grain of Judy's bench. A security camera installed quietly after a recent leak, designed to capture any misconduct. It wasn't supposed to record history that day, but it did. It caught the exact moment Victoria Lancaster tried to buy justice. Judge Judy's lips part, but no words come out yet. She simply studies the young woman. Victoria offers a casual shrug, as if the silence itself is inconvenient. She leans back in her chair, confidence radiating from every gesture. For her, this is routine. Money always fixes things. Money always wins. But Judy's expression has shifted from neutrality to something colder, sharper, like the air before a thunderstorm. The sound of camera shutters begins to echo through the courtroom. Someone whispers. Someone gasps. And in that moment, Victoria realizes she may have miscalculated. She shifts in her seat, clearing her throat. But it's too late. The balance of power has shifted. Judge Judy has seen it all. This wasn't arrogance. The voiceover cuts in, calm but electric. This was attempted bribery, caught live on hidden camera. For the first time in her life, Victoria Lancaster is not in control. The walls of the courtroom suddenly feel smaller, the eyes of the public heavier. Somewhere in the back row, a journalist clicks their pen. The bailiff gently lifts the envelope and walks it toward the evidence table. Judy doesn't look down. Her eyes stay locked on Victoria the entire time. And in those seconds, those frozen silent seconds, America witnesses a moment that will later dominate headlines, talk shows, and social media feeds. Before the night ends, FBI officials will be seen walking through the Lancaster estate. Before the week ends, the family's fortune will begin to crumble like plaster under rain. And before the story ends, we'll learn that what that hidden camera captured wasn't just a bribe. It was a betrayal buried under layers of privilege, one that started long before this courtroom moment. Because when investigators later open that envelope, they'll find more than $25,000 in crisp hundreds. They'll find a handwritten note, one short sentence. As discussed with Father, consider this a token of gratitude. That one line will turn a simple case into a federal scandal. That one word, Father, will send shockwaves across America. Judge Judy takes a slow breath, sets down her pen, and leans forward. The camera catches the faintest glint in her eyes, the one that says someone's about to learn the most expensive lesson of their life. And that's the moment where millions of viewers leaned closer to their screens, unable to blink, waiting for the gavel to drop. If you think no one, not even a billionaire's kid, should be above the law, hit that like button right now. Because this story is going to make you believe in karma again. Before that envelope ever reached Judge Judy's bench, before the cameras captured her name in the same breath as bribery, there was Victoria Lancaster, 24 years old, untouchable, and perfectly trained to believe the world bent at her will. Her life was a brand, a carefully curated fantasy that screamed luxury. Private jets with gold interiors, weekend getaways in Monaco, a townhouse in Manhattan that could fit a grocery store in its living room. She wasn't just the daughter of real estate billionaire Richard Lancaster. She was his mirror, his heiress, his favorite mistake disguised as perfection. Victoria had been raised in a house where consequences were for other people. Growing up, her father's voice was the law. He didn't just build towers, he built silence. He bought journalists. He bought politicians. He bought peace whenever trouble knocked. In the Lancaster world, every problem had a price tag, and every moral had a loophole. Her childhood was a revolving door of chauffeurs, assistants, and luxury that blurred into entitlement. Teachers who questioned her got transferred. Classmates who crossed her found themselves mysteriously expelled. Every broken rule came with a quick phone call, a settlement, a donation, and an eraser that wiped her slate clean. By her 20s, she had built a small empire of her own, not through work, but through inheritance of attitude. Her Instagram, @VickyLux, had 10 million followers watching her flaunt a lifestyle of diamond necklaces and captions like, "I don't do consequences." She didn't say it ironically. She meant it. One of her videos, filmed just weeks before the courtroom scandal, showed her stepping out of a Rolls-Royce, laughing with a glass of champagne in hand. "Rules are for people who can't afford lawyers," she said into the camera. It got 4.7 million likes. The comment section overflowed with both worship and disgust, but Victoria thrived on both. Attention was currency, and controversy was free publicity. Her father, Richard, didn't stop her. Why would he? Every controversy just reminded the public of his power. "Let her make noise," he once told a business partner, "as long as they spell Lancaster right." Then came the mistake, or rather, the moment the world stopped cleaning up after her. It was a rainy Tuesday evening in downtown Providence. Victoria was behind the wheel of her pearl-white Maserati, her phone glowing with a live stream she was hosting for her followers. In one hand, a designer coffee cup. In the other, a phone camera angled perfectly toward her face. She wasn't watching the road when a delivery man crossed the intersection with a brown box tucked under his arm. The thud that followed silenced the chat for exactly 3 seconds. The car didn't stop. It never even slowed down. The next morning, the headlines didn't say Victoria Lancaster involved in accident. They said, "Billionaire's daughter speeds away from scene. Victim hospitalized." For anyone else, that would have been the end of their career, maybe their freedom. But for Victoria, it was Tuesday. She laughed when her father's lawyer called to discuss it. "It's fine," she said, painting her nails while scrolling through comments. "My lawyers will handle it. They always do." And they did try. The Lancaster legal machine kicked into overdrive. Press releases, NDAs, hush money offers, private investigators sent to intimidate the victim, a delivery driver named Miguel Ortiz. But what the Lancasters didn't know was that Miguel had already gone public. A friend of his had posted the footage from a street camera to social media. The clip exploded overnight. A white Maserati, the license plate clear as day, and a caption that said simply, "Money drives away. Justice walks." Public outrage followed, and for the first time, the Lancaster name couldn't buy silence. The network behind Judge Judy's courtroom arbitration show took notice. And when the case file crossed Judy's desk, she paused longer than usual. Her producer asked, "Should we take it?" Judy replied without hesitation, "I'll take it personally." It wasn't just a case anymore. It was a statement. The system's most recognizable judge versus the nation's most untouchable family. And from that moment, the Lancaster legacy began to crack. Because Judge Judy wasn't there to listen to excuses. She was there to expose them. Victoria arrived at court believing it was another performance, that she could charm, laugh, or buy her way through one more scandal. She had no idea that the most dangerous thing she'd ever face was sitting behind that bench, holding a pen instead of a checkbook. Her father could buy buildings, cities, even senators. But he couldn't buy what she was about to lose. If you've ever wanted to see money meet its match, subscribe now, because Judge Judy's about to remind America that justice isn't for sale. Before the headlines, before the hashtags, there was just Miguel Ortiz, a quiet man in a gray uniform who never expected the world to know his name. 46 years old, single father, and the kind of man who believed that dignity was worth more than money. Every morning at dawn, Miguel laced his boots, kissed his 8-year-old son Mateo on the forehead, and whispered, "Papi's going to work. I'll be back before dinner." He wasn't rich, but his word meant something. It was all he had to give his son. The night Victoria's Maserati hit him, Miguel wasn't running late. He wasn't distracted. He was doing his job, carrying a package across the intersection, rain slicking the pavement beneath his feet. He looked both ways like he'd done 1,000 times. Then came the flash of headlights, the shriek of tires, and the crushing impact that would echo in his bones for months. When he woke up in the hospital, the first thing he saw was his son asleep in a chair beside him. The second was the doctor's face. "You're lucky," she said softly. "Your leg will heal, but it'll take time." Time. The one thing Miguel couldn't afford. The delivery company didn't offer paid leave. The bills started coming faster than the pain faded. Rent notices. Medical statements. Mateo's school fees. 2 days later, a man in a navy suit knocked on his door. "Mr. Ortiz," he said, holding a folder. "On behalf of the Lancaster family, we'd like to resolve this matter privately." Inside was a check for $5,000 and a non-disclosure agreement. The lawyer smiled politely. "Sign this, and you can move on with your life." Miguel stared at the paper. $5,000. It might have kept the lights on for a month. But he thought of his son, of the lesson it would teach him if he sold silence to the rich. He closed the folder and slid it back across the table. "My life doesn't have a price," he said quietly. That decision changed everything. A friend who'd been filming nearby posted a short clip of Miguel refusing the offer. Within hours, it was everywhere. The story of a working dad standing up to a billionaire's daughter who ran from accountability. The internet called him the delivery man who wouldn't sell his soul. Producers from Judge Judy saw the clip. Within a week, a letter arrived. "Mr. Ortiz, your courage deserves a fair hearing. We'd like to feature your case." When Miguel read those words, he didn't see fame or television. He saw something he hadn't felt in months, a chance to be heard, a chance to prove that justice still existed, even for men who didn't have lawyers or money or power. He looked down at Mateo, who was coloring at the kitchen table, and said softly, "Maybe, Mijo, maybe this time the truth will win." Common justice for Miguel. If you believe no father should have to fight alone against people who think they're untouchable. The morning of the hearing looked less like justice and more like a fashion show. Victoria Lancaster stepped out of her black SUV, flanked by 2 assistants, one holding a designer purse, the other carrying an iced latte she never drank. The flashes began the moment her heels hit the marble steps. Reporters shouted her name, influencers filmed her arrival, and Victoria smiled, because attention was her oxygen. Inside the courtroom, she took her seat as if she owned the place. Her ivory blazer gleamed under the lights. Her perfume clouded the air. When Judge Judy entered, the room stood. Victoria didn't. She rose a heartbeat late, slow enough to make it look intentional. A subtle message: "I'm not intimidated." From a start, her answers carried that same tone, polished sarcasm wrapped in entitlement. "Miss Lancaster," Judy asked, "do you recall striking a pedestrian?" Victoria tilted her head, pretending to search her memory. "Pedestrian is such a dramatic word, Your Honor. I barely tapped the man. My car has sensors." The courtroom rustled. Even the bailiff's eyes flicked up. Judge Judy's expression didn't change, but her gaze sharpened. Every question turned into a performance. Victoria sighed, smiled, crossed her legs, and whispered something to her attorney like it was all a minor inconvenience. She rolled her eyes when Judy pressed for clarity, whispered to the clerk about trivial details, and at one point even giggled. Her assistant, a nervous woman in glasses, sat rigid, glancing at her every few seconds as though waiting for an order. During the recess, Victoria's mask slipped. She leaned toward the assistant, voice low but sharp. "Put it under her notes. $25,000 should change your tone." The assistant froze. "Victoria." "Now," Victoria hissed, cutting her off. "Before she comes back." A white envelope appeared from Victoria's purse, sleek and crisp, the kind that whispered money. The assistant hesitated only a second before sliding it across the bench where Judy's notes sat. It rested there innocently, just another paper in a courtroom filled with papers. What neither of them noticed was the tiny lens hidden in the corner of the judge's bench, a security camera installed by Production just weeks earlier after an unrelated threat. It was never meant for drama. It was meant for protection. But that morning, it became the silent witness that would unravel everything. Judy returned to her seat, picked up her pen, and noticed the envelope. Her eyes lingered on it for a fraction of a second, then moved on. She said nothing. No visible reaction. But her posture changed. Her tone, cool and precise, began to slice through Victoria's carefully rehearsed answers like glass. The cameras rolled. The bailiff stood still. And somewhere deep in the editing booth, a producer would later describe that moment as the exact second arrogance turned to fear. Stay right here, because what happens next isn't just shocking, it's historic. You'll see the exact moment Judge Judy flips the entire courtroom upside down. The room fell silent the moment Judge Judy walked back in. Her eyes didn't scan the room the way they usually did. They locked on one person. Victoria Lancaster sat perfectly still, a smile hovering at the edge of her lips, the same one she'd worn since the beginning. But something about the air had changed, heavier, colder, almost electric. "Both sides, please rise," the bailiff announced. The scrape of chairs filled the space like a storm about to break. Judy adjusted her glasses, her voice steady but sharp enough to slice through the air. "Miss Lancaster," she began. A pause. The kind of pause that makes every heartbeat in the room count itself. "Did you think I wouldn't notice the envelope?" The words hit like thunder. The audience froze. Victoria blinked, confused for half a second, then laughed, a short, nervous sound that echoed too loudly. "Envelope? I don't know what you mean." Judy's stare didn't waver. "You placed an envelope under my notes during recess." She looked toward the producer's desk and gave a single, deliberate nod. "Roll it." The monitors flickered to life. The courtroom lights dimmed slightly. And there it was, in perfect, merciless clarity. The hidden camera's footage filled the screen. Victoria, leaning in close to her assistant. Her voice caught clearly. "Put it under her notes. $25,000 should change your tone." The envelope sliding across the bench. Her smirk. Her confidence. A gasp swept through the audience like a wave. Reporters raised their phones instinctively. The footage on screen was already becoming history. Victoria's lawyer put his head in his hands. The assistant's face turned white as paper. Judy didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Her silence was louder than shouting. She waited for the footage to end before she spoke again. "Do you know what the word bribery means, Miss Lancaster?" Victoria's voice shook for the first time. This isn't what it looks like." "Oh," Judy said, her tone dripping with steel. It looks exactly like what it is. She leaned forward slightly, pen tapping the desk once, a sound that could have been a gavel. "You don't bribe justice," she said slowly, letting every word land like a sentence. "You beg for it." The quote would be clipped, shared, and replayed millions of times before the day was over. Within minutes, social media would explode. Hashtag Money Can't Buy Judy trending nationwide. News tickers would start flashing. Judge Judy exposes bribe attempt live on air. As Victoria sat frozen, the side door opened quietly. Two men in dark suits entered, badges flashing under the light. The audience turned as one. The FBI agents took position at the back, waiting for Judy's signal. "This court," Judy said firmly, "is now in recess." The camera zoomed on Victoria's face, disbelief, humiliation, and the dawning terror of someone who'd never faced a real consequence in her life. If you think Judge Judy handled that perfectly, double tap that like, because what she does next made history. The moment Judge Judy uttered the word recess, the story stopped belonging to the courtroom and started belonging to the country. Within minutes, every major outlet was running the footage. The envelope, the whisper, the smirk, the moment Judy turned the gavel into a weapon of truth. The clip hit 30 million views before the afternoon ended. But for the Lancasters, the damage had only begun. Judge Judy returned to her seat later that day, the same pen in her hand, the same unshakable calm in her tone. "This court finds Miss Victoria Lancaster guilty of attempted bribery," she announced, each word crisp, unhurried, final. "You will pay full restitution to the victim, Miguel Ortiz, in the amount of $75,000. You will pay an additional fine of $250,000 to the state of Rhode Island." She paused, eyes still locked on Victoria. "And I am referring this case to the United States Attorney's Office for further criminal investigation." The audience erupted, gasps, murmurs, even a few cheers before the bailiff barked for silence. Victoria's head fell into her hands, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "Dad said this would never happen," she whispered, trembling. But her father wasn't in the courtroom anymore. He was on the phone, pacing through his mansion, watching live coverage of the scandal that was dismantling everything he'd built. Richard Lancaster had always been untouchable. Until that day. His company, Lancaster Properties, saw its stock plummet by 40% within hours. Major investors fled like rats from a sinking ship. Contracts were suspended, politicians stopped returning calls, and the family's glossy empire began to rot from the inside. When FBI agents arrived at the Lancaster estate the next morning, the image of black SUVs pulling through iron gates became the new face of accountability in America. Victoria was arrested on live television, handcuffed, crying, her designer heels clicking against marble as reporters shouted questions. Every step was another headline. "Billionaire's daughter in bribery scandal." Judge Judy refers Lancaster case to federal court. For the first time in her life, there was no makeup, no PR team, no father to make the consequences disappear. Meanwhile, Miguel Ortiz's world flipped in the opposite direction. He stood outside his small apartment, overwhelmed by reporters and neighbors cheering for him. "You stood up to them," one woman said. "You made all of us proud." A local business owner started a GoFundMe page that exploded overnight, raising over $200,000 in less than 24 hours. People from every state sent messages. "You're the reason we still believe in justice. Thank you for showing the world that the system can still work." Miguel didn't ask for fame. He didn't even know what to say when cameras were pushed toward him. He just smiled, held his son's hand, and said, "I just want to be treated fair." The clip of Judge Judy's final statement became the most replayed courtroom moment in American television history. Her voice echoed across news broadcasts, podcasts, reaction channels, and social media feeds. Integrity can't be bought, but arrogance always has a cost. That single line ended careers, rewrote reputations, and solidified Judy's legacy as the one person who could still make justice feel real. Late-night hosts quoted her. Law schools added the case to ethics lectures. High school students shared memes that read "Money meets its match." By the week's end, Victoria Lancaster's bail was denied pending investigation. Her father resigned from his company amid allegations of political bribery and campaign fraud. The mansion that had once symbolized their empire now sat behind yellow tape, a monument to what money can't protect. And across the country, millions of Americans tuned in again and again to watch that one unforgettable moment. Judge Judy's calm fury, the trembling billionaire's daughter, and the invisible line where privilege finally shattered under the weight of truth. If you believe Judge Judy's verdict was the justice every American needed to see, hit that like button and share this story. Because what happened in that courtroom didn't just change one family's fate, it reminded the whole nation that consequences still exist, even for the powerful. The morning after Judge Judy's verdict, America woke up to a new kind of headline. Across every screen, from New York to Los Angeles, the same words flashed in bold. The bribe that broke the billionaire. It wasn't just a scandal anymore, it was a cultural moment, one of those rare stories that united everyone from factory workers to CEOs, from college students to retirees. Clips of the hidden camera footage dominated every social media feed. TikTok edits replayed Judy's icy calm. Reaction channels cut in slow-motion replays of Victoria's smirk fading into terror. Hashtags flooded the internet. Hashtag money can't buy Judy. Hashtag justice served. Hashtag integrity over influence. By noon, even celebrities were weighing in. One actor tweeted, "If Judge Judy ran for president, I'd vote twice." Another influencer posted, "She didn't just serve justice. She served it cold." The clip shattered viewership records. Within 48 hours, it had crossed 100 million views across platforms. Talk shows replayed it, dissected it, glorified it. Legal experts called it the most significant televised courtroom moment since the O.J. trial. Law professors at Harvard and Stanford added it to their ethics curriculum under the title, "When Wealth Meets Accountability." For once, America wasn't divided. Everyone agreed on one thing. Judge Judy had done what no one else dared. She'd reminded the world that justice doesn't take bribes. Miguel Ortiz watched the chaos unfold from his modest kitchen table. The GoFundMe had crossed $400,000, donations pouring in from strangers with messages like, "For your courage," and "This is for every working dad who never gave up." A local news anchor came to interview him. The segment ended with Miguel holding his son's hand, smiling shyly. "I'm not a hero," he said. "I just wanted to do what's right." That moment went viral, too. Months later, with the help of community support and a small business grant, Miguel opened his own company, a delivery service he named Integrity Deliveries. His vans bore a simple slogan painted in blue, "We deliver honestly." When asked why he chose that name, he laughed softly. "Because it's the one thing no one can buy." Meanwhile, the Lancaster empire collapsed like a house built on rotten wood. Richard Lancaster resigned in disgrace, indicted for financial fraud after investigators uncovered a string of illegal campaign donations. Victoria was sentenced to 2 years in federal prison, her plea deal conditioned on public service and restitution payments to Miguel. Her social media accounts vanished overnight. The mansion, once a symbol of untouchable privilege, went dark, sold to pay legal debts. Judge Judy's episode became the most watched broadcast in her career. Networks called it the moment accountability went viral. Streaming platforms bid for exclusive rights to air it, and late-night hosts joked that Judy didn't need a gavel. She needed a cape. But what made the moment truly historic wasn't just the punishment. It was the shift in belief. For the first time in a long time, people across America felt that the system had actually worked. That justice, however rare, had stood its ground against power. Parents replayed the clip for their kids. Teachers used it in classrooms as a lesson on ethics. Even judges across the country cited Judy's composure as a model of judicial conduct. The most replayed sound bite came at the end of the episode. Judy's final words echoed through screens and hearts alike. Integrity can't be bought, but arrogance always has a cost. That quote became more than a line. It became a movement. Posters, t-shirts, murals, even protest signs borrowed it. A mural appeared overnight on the side of a building in Providence. Judy's stern face painted 10 feet tall, gavel raised, with those words written beneath in bold letters. Tourists stopped to take pictures. And somewhere far from the spotlight, in a quiet home with chipped walls and warm light, Miguel and his son watched it all unfold. Mateo looked up and asked, "Dad, do you think she'll ever say sorry?" Miguel smiled faintly. "Maybe. But we don't need her to. We already got our justice." The camera fades out on that. The image of a man who proved courage isn't about power. It's about principle. The sound of Judy's quote lingers one last time over slow, emotional music. Integrity can't be bought, but arrogance always has a cost. Victoria Lancaster thought she was buying silence. She bought history instead. If you believe real justice still exists, share this video. Let the world see what happens when privilege finally meets accountability. Smash that like button, comment "Justice Served," and subscribe, because the next story is even wilder. And trust me, you won't want to miss it.